In 2008, the crisis didn't start with Lehman Brothers. It started years earlier, in a corner of the mortgage market that most people had never heard of. By the time it became obvious, it was already too late to stop. Today, there's a $3 trillion market showing the same early warning signs. It's called private credit. It replaced bank lending after the financial crisis. It operates largely in the dark. And right now, investors are trying to get their money out, while funds are quietly limiting how much they can withdraw. This isn't a prediction. Parts of this are already happening. The question is whether it stays contained or follows the same path we've seen before. By the end of this video, you'll understand the exact chain reaction that could make this the story everyone wishes they'd paid attention to sooner. Over the past few weeks, one of the most important players in global finance made a move that, on the surface, didn't look like much. A major asset manager, Blackstone, limited withdrawals from one of its private credit funds. Now, that might sound minor. After all, funds restrict withdrawals all the time. But here's the problem. When investors want their money back and can't get it, that tells you two things at once. First, people are getting nervous, and second, the system itself might not be as stable as it appears. And in a market that has grown to trillions of dollars in size, that's not something you can just ignore. So the real question is this: is this just a temporary issue? Or is it the early warning sign of something much more serious? To answer that, we need to understand what private credit actually is. Because if you don't understand what's broken, you won't understand why this matters. At its core, private credit is very simple. Instead of borrowing money from a bank or issuing bonds on the public market, companies borrow directly from investment funds. These funds raise money from investors and then lend it out to businesses, collecting interest in return. In theory, it's just another way to finance companies. But in reality, it represents something much bigger. Because to understand why private credit exists, you have to go back to what happened after the 2008 financial crisis. After that crisis, regulators stepped in and made banks safer. They forced them to hold more capital, take fewer risks, and tighten their lending standards. And for the banking system, that worked. But finance doesn't like empty space. When banks pulled back from lending to riskier businesses, a gap was created. And where there's a gap in finance, someone will always step in to fill it. That someone was private credit. Over time, this new system grew rapidly. What started as a niche part of the market turned into one of the fastest growing areas in global finance. Today, private credit is estimated to be worth somewhere between $2 trillion and $3 trillion. And for years, it looked like the perfect solution. Investors were told they could earn higher returns than traditional bonds. Companies were told they could access financing more easily. And the risks, well, the risks didn't seem obvious at the time. But beneath that growth, problems were quietly building. And now, those problems are starting to surface. One of the biggest issues is how this system actually works. Because private credit isn't just simple lending. It's often layered with leverage on top of leverage. Funds don't just lend money. In many cases, they borrow money themselves to increase their returns. Investors put in capital, the fund adds debt on top of it, and then lends even more to businesses that are often already highly leveraged. In other words, it's debt on top of debt on top of debt. And that works well when the economy is stable. But when conditions change, that structure becomes extremely fragile. And conditions have changed. Interest rates are higher than they've been in years. That means the cost of borrowing has gone up across the entire system. Now, you might think that higher rates would be good for lenders, but in this case, they're not. because most private credit loans are floating rate. That means when interest rates rise, the cost is passed directly onto the companies borrowing the money. So suddenly, businesses that were comfortably paying their loans are now facing much higher interest expenses. And for many of them, that's a problem. And it doesn't stop there. But before we continue, if you're interested in seeing these risks before they show up in the news, subscribe. The other problem is that investors now have alternatives. If you can earn a solid return in relatively safe government bonds, the appeal of taking on higher risk for only slightly higher returns starts to fade. So you have pressure on both sides. Borrowers are struggling more, and investors are becoming less willing to take the risk. That's where things start to break. We're already seeing early signs of stress. Default rates are rising. Some estimates suggest they could reach levels well above historical averages, particularly in sectors like software. And that brings us to another critical issue: concentration risk. A large portion of private credit lending is tied to specific industries. One of the biggest is software. For years, software companies were seen as reliable borrowers: strong margins, recurring revenue, high growth. But now, that assumption is being challenged. Artificial intelligence is starting to disrupt entire segments of the software industry. Business models are being questioned. Competition is increasing. And in some cases, entire products are becoming obsolete. So the very sector that supported a large portion of private credit is now becoming a source of risk. And when those companies struggle, they struggle to repay their loans. Now, on its own, that might not sound catastrophic. After all, defaults happen in every credit market. But the real issue isn't just the defaults themselves, it's how those defaults spread through the system. Because private credit funds are not isolated, they are deeply connected to the broader financial system. Many of these funds borrow money from banks. Others are linked through complex financial arrangements. And some are indirectly tied to pensions, insurance companies, and retail investors. So when problems start in private credit, they don't stay there. They move. And one of the clearest signs of that movement is what's happening with investor behavior. More and more investors are trying to pull their money out of private credit funds. But here's the catch. These funds are not designed for quick withdrawals. They invest in illiquid assets, loans that can't easily be sold, deals that take time to unwind. So when too many investors want their money at once, the funds have to limit withdrawals. This is often called gating. And technically, it's working exactly as intended. But from an investor's perspective, it feels very different. Imagine going to withdraw your money and being told you can only take a fraction of it. The money is still yours, but you can't access it when you want. That's where confidence starts to break. And in financial markets, confidence is everything. Because once investors start to worry, behavior changes. People rush for the exits. Funds are forced to sell assets. Prices drop. Losses increase. And what started as a contained issue can quickly become something much larger. Now, to be clear, this doesn't automatically mean we're heading for another global financial crisis. There are important differences compared to 2008. The private credit market, while large, is still smaller than the mortgage market was back then. Banks are better capitalized, and there isn't the same level of complex derivatives amplifying the risk. So it's entirely possible that this remains contained. But it's also possible that it doesn't. Because the real risk isn't just the size of the market, it's how interconnected everything has become. Private credit funds are linked to banks. Banks are linked to the broader economy. And the businesses that rely on this funding are often the same businesses that drive employment and economic activity. So if credit tightens, those businesses struggle. If those businesses struggle, they cut costs. If they cut costs, jobs are lost. And when jobs are lost, the effects spread even further. That's how financial stress turns into economic stress. And that's how a localized problem can evolve into a broader downturn. There's also another layer to consider. For years, private credit expanded during a period of low interest rates and strong economic growth. In that environment, risk was easier to manage. But now, we're in a very different environment. Higher rates, slower growth, more uncertainty. And systems that were built for one set of conditions don't always perform well in another. So, the question isn't just whether there are problems in private credit. The evidence suggests there are. The real question is how far those problems will go. Will they remain contained within a relatively small part of the financial system? Or will they act as the trigger for something larger? Because history has shown that financial crises rarely start where people expect them to. They start in the areas that grew the fastest, the areas that nobody was really paying attention to. And for a long time, private credit fit that description perfectly. Maybe this is nothing. Maybe this is just a temporary adjustment in a growing market. Or maybe it's the tip of the iceberg, the first crack in a much larger system, and the beginning of a new financial crisis. We'll have to wait and see. If you want to stay ahead of stories like this, subscribe, because by the time everyone's talking about it, it's usually too late. See you in the next one.